All right, I'm John Hazel, automation expert and business strategist.
And I'm Kevin Miller, software lead and seasoned podcaster.
And this is the Automate and Elevate podcast where we help you build systems, create leverage, and scale your business.
On today's episode, we're going to dive into the exciting world of cybersecurity with artificial intelligence. So, John, there's a lot going on with artificial intelligence and just keeping your application secure. Like, for example, Vercel recently, they got hacked because one of their employees was not appropriately using an AI tool, and he ended up getting his credentials taken. And in this new era, cybersecurity is more important than ever. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's critical. So this Vercel situation is bad because it's a server that hosts a bunch of people. Well, they're not the actual server; they run on AWS mostly, but it's a platform that a whole bunch of people are hosting their own applications on. So instead of it just impacting them, it's impacting all of their customers. So we really have to be mindful. Obviously, I'm a huge proponent of leveraging the AI tools. I've been using AI assisted coding since 2023, but it's just really important that we have the checks and balances to make sure that everything's secure. So I know people are freaking out about Claude Mythos. I think it should be taken seriously. I think it's slightly blown out of proportion, but I do think it's very serious. And it was just inevitable that we'd get to this point. Like as we make AI better and better, as we make LLMs in this case better and better at coding, they're naturally going to get better and better at hacking because the two go hand in hand. Like hacking is the flip side of coding, right? If you're a good coder, if you're a really good coder, then you start to be a good hacker. So obviously, Mythos has gotten, they've leveled up the coding because that's been Anthropic's primary focus, and because of that, obviously, it's going to be good at hacking. And yeah, there's going to be things that you know, even for dozens of years that people haven't paid close attention to, exploits that like the OpenBSD one, um, but I think we'll sort through this. The main concern is really people keeping their stuff up to date. And it's also a weird thing because it's like sometimes you may not want to be on the latest version because you don't know if they're using AI tools and not paying close attention and they introduced an exploit on the latest version. But then it's like you also kind of need to be on the latest version to make sure you're covered from any vulnerabilities that were discovered and patched. So it's a tricky thing.
Yeah, I think another aspect to consider is the self-inflicted wounds, where a lot of people there thinking the chat box is personal, like it's private, but they're grabbing their company's information and putting it in there, and now that information has become public. So you can't just put anything in the prompt when you're dealing with AI.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about becoming public. I mean, it can be. Sometimes people create a share link to send it to somebody and they assume that it's not going to get discovered. At one point, the OpenAI share links were crawlable by search engines. And so if you shared a chat, then Google picked up on that. That's not the case anymore, but still security through obscurity is very limited security. So you really can't rely on that. But even if it's not becoming public, like you've handed it over to OpenAI and it's getting used to train their future models. And the better the models get, models might start to eventually be able to call on really specific pieces of data that they were trained on. Like in general, the models can't necessarily do that. There's this averaging thing that happens, and then there's also like the post training and and the system prompt and stuff. So there's all these layers that end up kind of obscuring the model from very specific bits of training data. So it's unlikely if which by the way, I've done this before years ago. Like I said, I've been using AI assisted coding since 2023. There were times where I had like an API key hard coded into a script and I dropped the entire script into ChatGPT to help me debug something, and then I realized, oh, the API key was in there, and I had to roll and the API key change that, and And so it's like highly unlikely that a future OpenAI model is going to be able to call back on that specific API key, but it's not impossible. And so I think it becomes risky when things are really deeply proprietary and confidential. I think that's one advantage that smaller businesses tend to have is it's like, well, it's more important that I get this thing done as quickly as possible than that I worry about the fact that OpenAI has access to some of my data, right? But then there's laws around some things, where confidentiality. So yeah, you have to be conscientious. You also need to take calculated risks and know what's going to be the most effective for your business.
Yeah. So how do you foresee companies really being able to protect themselves? Like, what are some of the basic steps they should be taking at least to have a minimum level of security?
Yeah. If you're using AI to assist in coding, um, I would highly recommend having somebody with decent cybersecurity knowledge on your team. One of the ways you can do that, I hire offshore and I can place somebody at your company full time that is helping to make sure that the software that you're putting out is really robust, it's effective, there's some quality assurance, and then most importantly, that it's super secure. And so I can place somebody full time for far less expensive than someone domestic at your company to help with that. But I think that's the key. Like you can't you're going to be able to patch some things up just having the AI say, like if you prompt the AI and say, I want you to act like a white hat hacker, act like a cybersecurity specialist that's helping patch this thing up and have it patch it up, right? And that's going to get even better when you have access to Mythos. So you'll be able to, you'll be able to do that on some level, but it's still not the same as having somebody who really understands this stuff and asking them to do that. They'll still leverage the AI tools to speed up their workflow, but they're going to know exactly what to look for, exactly what to prompt the AI tool for. Like say, please ensure that we don't have any of these specific exploits. And a cybersecurity specialist is going to get a much better output from the AI than just the leader of the organization, right? So I think again, it depends on the size of the organization. Sometimes you have to take calculated risks, and sometimes it just is worth it to get the thing you need out there, and you can start. You say, I just need to get revenue, or I just need to reduce my expenses by deploying the software, and I need to do it now, and hopefully nothing will happen. And sometimes that's what you need to do, but as much as possible, you want to make it as secure as is reasonable.
Yeah, I think you should also set up a routine schedule on which you're rotating your API keys. Because if you're not doing that and one of your keys gets taken, now you're in a world of hurt. So, I mean, this is basic common sense stuff, just like how you should change your password every so often. Make sure
Yeah,
your credentials are always being rotated.
yeah, exactly. It's good.
So, yeah, in terms of Claude Mythos, I mean, do you feel like it's actually as good as they say, or is it a little bit overhyped?
I mean, I think I- most people are like the people in Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, the people that are immersed in AI stuff, they're not looking at what the thing can do right now. They're always building for what does it look like 6 months from now. What is the new model that this is leading to look like 6 months from now? And I think what Anthropic is saying is they're like, okay, we've crossed a threshold where this stuff is not just good at like some front end stuff, like some back end coding when it's very narrow scope. Like this has gotten so good at coding that it is now able to discover exploits or like discover vulnerabilities and build exploits for those vulnerabilities. And I think it's like, obviously we've always got doomers that are looking at it and being like, this is it. We're cooked. Like it's over. Everything. The entire internet is going to get destroyed by Mythos, and it's like it's not on that level, you know. And humans are adaptable. Like we find a way. So I think it's slightly overhyped, but I think we should take it seriously. I think the AI models have gotten really, really good, and I would not be surprised if I think there's a reason Anthropic held it back for a little bit to get some of these major systems that the entire world is running on to discover if there's any vulnerabilities that Mythos would be able to find and patch those things before the model goes public. I think that's going to become a normal thing, and maybe not just in this specific vertical, maybe not just for hacking and coding, but there may be other things that it's like Mythos hits this point where it's so powerful that it's like we have to in some other industries, it's like there are certain powerful players that need to be able to create protections in some way before somebody else can use it maliciously, which I don't know what that would look like. I'm just saying this is the beginning of that era.
So like as AI models become increasingly more powerful, what do you foresee them being able to do, let's just say a couple of years from now, that they can't really do that well now?
Just in general.
Yeah, in general, or just in terms of productivity, like let's just say running a business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think they continue to get, I think for a while, like I think for quite a while, the next several years, it's still prompt dependent. And that's where a lot of these middleware softwares are extremely valuable. Like in my experience, I get really good web designs out of lovable.dev when I am not when I leave plenty of room for it um, to be creative. Basically, I don't know what Lovable system prompt is, but I know it's got a really good one because it's there's a randomness factor to where my websites come out different every time, and I add a bunch of context and I give like a specific, these are the sections I want build. I flesh that out with Claude, right? Um, but when I take that same prompt and I put it in other AI website building tools, it doesn't come out as creative, right? Because the system prompt with Lovable is just so much better. So I think that's still going to be the case for the next few years. And therefore, the reason I say that is that to build and run a business for an AI agent, right? Like, so I run OpenClaw. I just run it virtually on an AWS server. I don't have a physical server I'm running it on, but I'm running OpenClaw, and I'll have it do things, and it'll kind of, you know, it'll go off and handle something with a sub agent, and then it'll come back with a report later, and that stuff is like decent, but it's just not there yet where it can like run a business, and we're a ways away from that. And even when we start to get close to that, it's going to primarily rely on still the inputs and like the human in the loop piece. It's not, we're still a long ways away from saying like AI, just saying, hey, build me this business and letting it go and spend a few $1,000s in tokens, and then all of a sudden you're bringing in revenue. I'm not saying that won't happen. I think there is a point where that will happen, and I think we want to be ready for that and be some of the first people to get to that and start making money off of it. But we're still a few years away from that. However, it's like getting so good at certain things, like the voice agents are really good, really low latency, again with the right prompts, right? Like depending on what you put in for bland.ai or Sierra or any of these voice agents, what you put in is what you get out as far as the quality of it. So over the next few years, I think we'll continue to see AI being embedded in different tools, and that's like where the real power comes from more than anything. Um, you know, my grandfather said he's really excited about AI and hearing aids because the AI will be able to, and this may be different machine learning models, right? Like we're not talking about the Anthropic model in here, but um, with AI assisted hearing aids, it's going to be able to like hone in on one person's voice in the room. So when you're, and ideally it's connected somehow to your eyes to where it sees what you're looking at, or maybe it's just the orientation of your head, but it's picking up on the one person you're talking to, and everything else goes silent, right? Like noise cancel everything else and just hear that person. Like those kinds of applications are super exciting where we integrate it into these other things, right? But what I don't want to see is AI integrated into everything, like the Internet of Things movement, and your refrigerators serving you ads and stuff like that. Like that's what we don't want, right?
So yeah, I know like right now the cost of AI, it's being subsidized pretty much, and eventually the prices are going to raise up. So let's just say, for example, I just heard today Anthropic, the A/B testing on the $20 tier. Some users they're removing Claude code and putting it down, putting it beyond the $100 tiers. So like, how do you build your business to where you're taking into account that these prices will inevitably increase?
Um, I don't actually think they will inevitably increase. I think each new like on a brand new model, it's going to be more expensive, but then same thing as everything else. Like there's just this depreciation, especially once another new model releases, then the previous model gets cheaper, and the further along we get, previous models are now really good. Like the previous model of Sonnet, of Opus, of OpenAI, all the frontier models. Like we go back to the 2025 model, it's still really good, but it's a lot cheaper than the 2026 model, right? So it depends on your use case and what you're trying to get done. And if you need the most current model, yeah, it's going to be more expensive, and prices are going to fluctuate. But the good thing is that this is a very competitive market, and so pricing is actually really, really important. And so that it'll continue to go, like prices will get driven down because a competitor's price is going down because they're trying to win you over, right? Um, and then you have people like DeepSeek and Grok come on the scene, and there's like very generous free tiers, and then there's open weight models and stuff. So I'm not too concerned about that personally. I will say that like trying to run OpenClaw for me on Sonnet, like it's very expensive. You see all these, people talking about going out and buying Mac Minis and putting OpenClaw on them, but like it gets really expensive. So unless you just have a lot of money already, or you can directly attribute revenue to that OpenClaw instance, it's kind of hard to justify a lot of times, because at this point, many times it would still be more. You still get more out of a human employee than you are tinkering around with the AI agent, unless you're using it for a very specific use case that has proven itself in the business. But if you're trying to have like a general AI agent that does a bunch of things for your business, you're still better off, hiring a human for that, right?
Do you think it's still important to hire humans over the long term and just have a mixture of humans versus AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key is hiring humans that know how to use AI. And that's where people are going to get left behind, is not being able to leverage it. And so I brought somebody onto my team like a month ago that had never touched Claude, had never touched Claude Code for sure, or Cursor, didn't even have a development background, has a marketing focus, and trained her on how to use Lovable to prototype the website, and then how to use Cursor to refactor it into the language and framework we needed it to be on. And I see her a couple weeks later, and it's clear she's like adapted on how to communicate with the AI, how to understand, even in a highly technical domain that she has no experience with, she's starting to learn how to get the AI to break it down for her and like think logically through where the issue and the bottleneck is. And that's the key, is like you need human employees that are critical thinkers, because and that know how to leverage the tools available to them.
I think this is a great stopping point before we get out of here and we end today's episode. What closing thoughts did you want to leave with our audience?
I mean, I think that what I just said is really the key, is like make sure you're skilling up. And we talk about this, we've talked about this several times already, but like you got to skill up, you got to keep, and you know, I'm an INTP on the Myers-Briggs, and I met another INTP entrepreneur, and I was like, how do you deal with these things, like the what feels like a weakness in the entrepreneurial world as with our personality? And he was like, you got to be able to throw spaghetti at the wall. Like you have to be able to waste resources, money, time, or else you're not going to produce something of serious economic value. And so I've just been like chewing on that for weeks now, and realized like, oh, I haven't been giving myself time for that. I need to give myself time to just experiment, right? And for me, like that can be a really fun flow state, and that's not that way for everybody. So figure out what works for you, but budget at least a little bit of time each week where you're just experimenting with new things and then imagining the possibilities of where they can plug in. And if you're not really sure, that's a great time to have a conversation with a consultant. I'd love to talk with you and see how we can fit AI into your business and make you more efficient and effective.
Awesome. And we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.